afternoon. It is absolutely my pleasure to welcome each one of you to this professional development session for today. This is another one in our series of conversations about the HyFlex format for teaching. Just another way of reaching our students. And the session today, we have invited some faculty members who have experienced HyFlex to some degree over the past. None of us have for a long period of time, but who have experienced HyFlex to some degree over the past less than a year, and have some things to share with you about how it works for them. So let me let you know that it is indeed a pleasure for me to introduce you to Rosemary Rahill, who's a professor in the French department, to Ricky Langlois in criminal justice, and Frank de la Torre in criminal justice. And I'm going to let each one of them give you a brief introduction, because if they gave you a full introduction, we wouldn't have any time for anything else. But to do a brief introduction, and then we'll get into some topics that they have shared with us to share with you about this new and really exciting way of reaching your students. So thank you. I will let you, Rosemary, how about getting started with us?
Sure. So my name is Rosemary Rahill, and I am an instructor of French at FAU. I'm an FAU grad, and I teach a vast array of French courses from beginning through 3,000 level classes. But really what I seek to do is to motivate students to continue pursuing their study of French. It's beneficial for so many reasons, foreign language study. I'd love to talk to you more about that another occasion. Also, I am privileged and flattered to be on this panel and working with such a wonderful group of professionals. So I want to say thank you to all of you. And also, I am an avid user and supporter of the Center for Online and Continuing Education, and I encourage all of you to use their resources. It's just been an amazing experience for me, uplifting, and on a professional level, it's just been fantastic. So there's my introduction. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ricky Langlois. I'm in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice. I, too, am very, very grateful to be part of this panel. I just find it so helpful to be able to talk to my peers and to just sort of converse with them about the things that work and the things that don't work, always keeping in mind one thing, and they probably get tired of me saying this, but I am student-centered. That's my focus. It's on my students and how can I best deliver to them through my classwork, whether it be online or face-to-face. And of course, now it's really more primarily online, even though we call it HyFlex and other terms. But it's all about how can we be and do the best we can be in this environment. And I like to tell people that my learning curve is vertical, even though I've been doing this for many years now since I retired as a federal agent. And I'm still learning. I'm actually taking a class right now from this lovely lady, Dr. Judy Summers, and as I'm sitting here with you, and she's teaching me even more. And so it's just, you never quit learning.
Thank you, Frank. But it is not I who's teaching you here. But thank you for the kind words. And Frank, we're going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then move into our first topic, which is has to do with lights.
Thanks, Sophie, for inviting me to be on this panel. It's my pleasure and honor to be here and share some of my experiences with you. A little bit about myself. I'm a retired Chief Assistant Public Defender from Fort Lauderdale, Florida for 35 years. I've been an adjunct instructor at FAU since 1994. And also teach. I teach also as an adjunct at NSU in Fort Lauderdale, and so that's my background. I teach a bunch of criminal justice classes, and it's not work; it's fun. I love teaching. I love learning about teaching, and because of that, I'm taking the same class Ricky's taking with Dr. Summers, and it's an incredible class. I guess I'm here because in fall of 2020, I taught a HyFlex class for a whole semester at NSU. And one thing I found out real quickly with teaching in this format, which by the way, I find fun. It's really fun to teach in this format because something always goes wrong. I know at NSU, they had my picture at their IT department because I would show up early because I knew something was going to go wrong and I couldn't fix it. And I would call them and they'd hop up and fix it for me. So I did this through a whole semester, twice a week. And I found out real quickly that most of the students chose to stay home and watch my lectures through Zoom. But I had a faithful 2 or 3 students that showed up every class. And almost every class, inevitably, there was something wrong. I got better at it. I knew how to fix the technology. And so with that, I made it through the semester and honestly grew to enjoy this mode of teaching. First of all, it got me out of the house, which I was grateful for. And I enjoy teaching face-to-face, and even though there was only 2 or 3 students every class, I did enjoy it. So with that came FAU, and FAU transitioned to HyFlex also. Because of my experience with NSU, I did a little presentation to my department of criminal justice, and also was honored by Judy to do a little PD on this subject. And so, as I said, I've been teaching since 1994. Yes, I'm real old. And I can't tell you, I can't remember specifically all those years, one particular class. So with that, I have the 8 a.m. class at FAU this semester, January 11th, and it's germane to my story. The classroom is GS 115, GS building, General Classroom South. I've taught there many, many times. Familiar with this class. It's an 8 a.m. class. I live in Weston. I literally got up at 5 o'clock in the morning because I'm getting there early because I know something's going to be wrong with the equipment. I get there and I'm so excited. I get the first parking spot. It's 8 a.m. Nobody's there except some raccoons and me. And so I walk to my classroom, a short walk. I park by the library. I go to the GS building. I know exactly where my classroom is. Like I said, I've taught there many times before. I walk into the classroom. It's pitch dark. It's early in the morning. It's 7 a.m. My class is at 8 a.m. I know where the light fixtures is because I've taught in this classroom. So I walk over carefully because I can barely see where I'm going. I turn on the lights. No lights. I got it. They moved the light. It's the other light fixtures right behind me. I go there, walk carefully, hit a desk, but I'm okay. I turn on the lights. No lights. Okay, I wasn't expecting this problem. I do have a iPhone. Here it is, and I turned on the lights to it. Because literally cannot see anything. If anybody taught GS, there's no windows in GS. So I turn, I got my lights, I go to the podium, and I see a number. I call that number. It's a good number to have in case you have any problems. I call and they immediately pick up. Very nice gentleman. And I said, listen, I have a little issue. My lights aren't working. He goes, that's not my department, but I'll come help you. And he did. So he comes into my room and he does exactly what I did. And I turned on the lights. Now, he turns on the lights, no lights go on. Now, I'm not the brightest light in the chandelier. My wife tells me that every day. And perhaps she's right, but I know how to turn on lights. So he does the same thing, goes to the other lights, no lights. So there's no lights in my room and my class is about to start shortly. I take out my camera. I make a decision to go forward with the class. I turn on the equipment. Remarkably, everything worked. The camera worked, the sound system worked, and I actually had some students coming in. I had one of the students help me open both doors and prop them open to get some light. The only issue was the camera. I was very dark, very dark. And when the Zoomers started coming in, I explained to them what was happening. And I said, listen, we have an issue here. We're going to go forward through this class. I had 5 live students, which was a record and still is for me in this format of teaching. 5 live students. The rest of the 60-something students were on Zoom. I said, we're going to go forward to it. You might see them a little dark. That's because we have no lights in the room. I'm not kidding. No lights in this room. I go, but that's okay. Because my wife, who I've been married to, I call her my lovely bride, she tells me, I look better in the dark. So you guys have got an extra little gem here. You don't have to see me in bright lights. It's in the dark. So with that, we made a joke about it. We all had a good laugh. Students that knew me before from other classes agreed with my wife. I do look better in the dark. And so we went through the entire class. It went off marvelously. The point of the story is when you're teaching in this format, get there early. You got to get there early to clean off the area, disinfect it that you're in, and expect something to be going awry. Something's going to be going off with. A lot of times it's the sound. The Zoomers, you can hear them, they can't hear you. Or like my last class, it was set to another format, and I could hear everybody, but they couldn't see me. It's a simple fix, but something usually is wrong with the equipment for some reason. The IT staff is incredible. They'll come over and help you immediately. But the point of my long-winded story is be prepared for the equipment, something going off with the equipment, something off. Get there early, disinfect your area, and you can get through this. Have fun with it. It's a great mode of instruction.
The great takeaway: check everything out ahead of time. Early arrival. Make sure that you have the phone number available for help, and that takes us to another question that we had, or another comment. Rosemary, talk to us a little bit about the concept of tech check.
Yeah, it really ties into what Frank was just saying, of course, but I like to make it a little bit more, I like to make it dynamic. Now in the language class, I have a maximum of 24 students. Maybe this can't apply for a class of 60 or more, although you could divvy up the class, but we have a welcome. I call it the tech check. And it would simply be in the beginning when students are just learning something very simple like bonjour, hello, something like that. So what I do is we go through the whole classroom and everybody comes on board on their mic, and we do request the cameras on and of course the mics on for our language class. So, but now what I do now that we move along with the semester is I'll pose some kind of question or ask for a vocab word, something content-based, and build that into the tech check as well. So basically, just to make sure that, first of all, they hear me, and that I hear and see them, and everybody hears and sees them, because we did have a student the other day, we all commented she sounded like Darth Vader, so we decided it was a better choice for her to use the chat, and she agreed, and we all laughed. So it was a fun moment. So I think what Frank is saying and what I'm saying too is, again, and it's in the title of this session today, is, you know, it's okay that things don't go right all the time, and we can make it fun and laugh about it. So that's an important thing too.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And we never know, you know, no matter what format we're stepping into in the classroom, we never know exactly what's going to be happening. So take it, you know, take it as it comes, move through it. Would you share something about your comments about Hear My Smile?
Actually, I would love to do a demonstration. So I guess you all could tell that I'm smiling right now, but obviously when we're teaching on campus, we're teaching with a mask on. So that does have the limitation, and something we're all lacking, I think, in our daily life is seeing people smile. So I just like to put my mask on sometimes and say, okay, can you hear my smile now? No. Okay, can you hear my smile now? So just sort of making sure you're elevating your voice, exaggerating it, and just reminding students that there is a smile behind the mask, and they find that very encouraging. Now I will remove my mask. So just to continue about the smile, I think that it gives students really, they feel more connected to you as well. Sometimes, you know, when they're at home, I have a student who alternates between being at home and coming in person. And when they're at home, as we all know, he said, class goes by so much quicker when I come here, and that's a good thing. They can really sort of maybe even get discouraged, or maybe I also tell them my voice doesn't necessarily sound as friendly over the microphone. There might be an echo in the room. So it's even more important for them to understand that there really is a smile, even if sometimes the voice might sound a little bit more harsh than it normally would. The smile certainly does help, but I can't talk like that the whole time. My mask gets sucking up against my face, but it definitely has proven beneficial.
Absolutely. Thank you. Frank or Ricky, something about being comfortable in your environment. We've had a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, let me. I want to bounce off of Rosemary a minute. I learned so. I'm surrounded by those most beautiful women who are so intelligent and taught me so much. And one of them is Dr. Brittany Edelman. And one day on a call, she said, with some of us, she said, you know, your students know you're human. Don't be afraid to show that you're human. You know, don't be afraid to show, you know, that emotion, which is the thing that may really respect and love about you. That is one of the things that Rosemary reminds me of when she does the smile is your students expect a lot of things out of you, but I think one of the biggest things they expect is that you are human. And so there's times I'll just stop my class and say, hey guys, is this okay with you? I mean, here we are in this environment, you know, you guys are on Zoom. I've got about 10 or 15 people, not 15, there's like 10 or 11. And so they start talking and start giving me feedback and start talking to me. I go, well, I just wanted to give, I call it a check-in. I just wanted to check with you because it concerns me sometimes. You're there and I'm here. And so that's one of the biggest things that I try to do is, and I do mess up. I have messed up in all my HyFlex classes a little bit. I think you have to realize a couple of things. Some of you, like Rosemary, may have the smaller class sizes, anywhere from, you know, 19 to 26 people. Frank and I don't have that luxury. We teach a maximum of 69, 70 students. And all of our classes are huge. I teach 3, he teaches 3. And so I have to think about the design of my HyFlex, not just when I'm doing the delivery. It's obviously online in my Canvas learning management system, but how am I going to do this in the classroom, irrespective of how many show up in the classroom or how many show up online? What is my approach going to actually be? Am I going to do death by PowerPoint and just run through PowerPoints and comment on every other one of them or every one of them? No, that might not be the best way to do it. Maybe I need to take a different approach to how I'm going to be here and do this. So you just got to give it some thought. But one of the biggest things I'd leave you with is I really don't have any fear of failure because, I mean, I've been shooting from the hip for a long time now. I prefer not to shoot from the hip because I want my class to get the full content and the message of what I'm trying to deliver. But we're in a new environment. This is new to all of us, and we all have a huge learning curve. Some of us are ahead of others in the game, but that's why we're here talking today. But that's what I'd leave you with is just don't be fearful of trying things and being human, as Dr. Brittany Edelman would say. That is a quote right from her.
And Ricky, if you would comment just a little bit while we have your video on about the differences in being in a smaller group, smaller classroom, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I'm walking into this huge classroom. Now what?
Yeah, I mean, I will be the first to tell you that my delivery with a small, God, it's been a long time since I've had a small class, but certainly my course content may change somewhat. I'm a big believer in discussions, essays, journaling, maybe do what Rosemary suggested. You can break them out into groups much easier. So, when you're dealing with a large class, it's obviously going to be different. Your environment is different. I mean, it just changes the whole dynamic of the class when you have that large contingent of students, and how best can you get that content across to them. And so, I can't tell you, I mean, Judy, most of what I know, and I'm not saying it because you're here doing this, but you, Nicole, others, Janisha, others at the Center for E-Learning, Center for Online Learning and Continuing Education. Now, if it weren't for me working constantly with you guys, and I made a comment a while ago that I was taking your class, and so did Frank, that just goes to show you what it takes. I mean, we're here teaching. I'm taking this simply because I can teach better. These professional developments that we have, sometimes we call them faculty lab, but sometimes we have PDs. And when I'm surrounded by Rosemary, Dr. Shehadeh, Brittany Edelman, Frank, and others, I learn more from my peers than I do anything. So I'm comfortable in my skin and in my environment, and I'm not afraid of making mistakes. I'm just not.
Bless you for that, Ricky. Yeah, and I will let everyone know that that wherever you are, however you are teaching, there is help available for you. We're always there behind that for you. So Rosemary, I think that you have had some experience in doing breakout rooms. Can you share some of that with us, please?
Sure. And obviously, again, in a foreign language class, as much practice as students can have speaking, the better it is for them, of course. So Zoom, the breakout room feature, functions very easily. It's very, very intuitive. But the first time I did have a mishap, because it wasn't a breakout, it was a break apart room, because sometimes students might log in their sound in one login, and then their video in one login, and their audio in another login. So I literally had a guy who his face was in one room and his voice was in the other. But again, then when I realized it, we all came back and we laughed about it. So it was just one of those things, because it happens to students as well to have mishaps with their sound or to forget to mute and unmute. But I do encourage the use of breakout rooms, knowing that the breakout rooms they're not recorded. So it's not part of what's recorded in your Zoom cloud recording. But it's nice to take what goes on in there, and you can visit them easily, to take what goes on in there and have the group sort of present, or just other ways of bringing whatever happens in those breakout rooms into the whole classroom. And then at the same time, not forgetting when I do that, not forgetting that I have students in person as well, and finding different ways of getting them involved and them feeling a part of what's going on online. So that's another challenge with the whole format as well. But I definitely recommend the breakout rooms. And I was afraid of it myself, and I am just absolutely thrilled to be using that feature.
Well, share with us a little bit about how that worked for you.
Well, basically, it's just a selection in Zoom. I think you have to, depending on what your screen looks like, you might have to click on a more button to see it. And it's so intuitive. You just click on the breakout room feature, and you have the option of saying you want 10 breakout rooms, or you want 5 breakout rooms, or you can assign people specifically to different rooms. You can also pre-assign breakout rooms, and I've never done that. I sort of like to make it somewhat random, but typically I will make sure that, since most students, we do ask that they have their cameras on, but some do not sometimes. I wouldn't want a whole breakout room of students not using their video feed, at least make sure that to sort of distribute those students throughout the different rooms. But again, it's very intuitive. You can make announcements to all the breakout rooms. That feature pops up. It's quite easy to use. And then you simply can join them, and you move back into the full class, and then you have to go back out to another breakout room. In other words, you can't go from breakout room to breakout room. You're in the breakout room, you go back to the full screen class, and then you go into another room. And then when you call them back, they get a message to come in. Also, we mentioned this about breakout rooms, doing it on and off throughout the class. If there are students who are just kind of logged in but not participating in the class, they're not going to see that they're getting called to a breakout room. So you're going to know that they've kind of wandered off and they're not participating in what's going on at all. If they have their video off, you really have no idea what's going on. So it is a really great way also of just making sure people are still there, even though they might appear like they're there and they're not actually there.
Yeah, thank you. And I see that Brittany has joined us in this session. Brittany, do you want to add some comments or anything about the breakout rooms or anything else that we have shared?
Oh, hi, everyone. I guess I'm not sure what all has not been added, but I have pre-assigned the breakout rooms, and I find that quite useful. It's actually very simple when you make the meeting. If you, it gives you the option to pre-assign, and if you choose that, it actually brings up a template that you follow. And so it's really simple. Usually you need the email addresses of your students. So I just get them out of Canvas and I put them in there, and then you assign them following the format, and then you just load it in. The only thing you have to be careful about is that when you want to use pre-assigned breakout rooms, you want the students to sign in using their FAU ID. So when you make the Zoom meeting, you want to make sure that you restrict it to authorized users, meaning that they'll have to sign in with their FAU ID, because that's what you're linking it to. Otherwise, you'll have a bunch of students that don't, and they'll be it'll only assign the ones to the breakout rooms that were attached to the emails in the list that you pre-assigned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Brittany. And so do you have any challenges when you pre-assign specific students to specific rooms?
I don't, but that's because we're working in the rooms in small groups, and I assign the groups at the beginning of the semester. And so that's nice because I only have to do it once. Then each class, since it's a recurring meeting, when I go in, when I'm ready for them to work in their small groups, I just open the breakout rooms and they're already all assigned to their rooms. I think you have to remember too that the student email is attached to Gmail. And so what that means is that sometimes they can get signed in under a Gmail address. And so I think in a class of 60, I had 3 that I had to always put in their appropriate breakout rooms because they were still signed in under the Gmail. And it lets them through even if you have the restricted to the SSO access on the in the breakout rooms in your Zoom. But that's it. No other issues. Really easy in Zoom, easy peasy.
And you want to make sure that they do not have the capability of changing their names, or you may also want to have them log in. I typically do that so that I can check off who's here. We have a question from Chantal. How keeping track of of the chat comments? Yeah, excellent question. Do any of you want to address that question about chat? Okay, Frank, you're on, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. So I cannot lecture and keep track of questions from the chat. So in the beginning of the class, I know ahead of time who my face-to-facers are going to be because they have to reserve a seat. When I see that, I reach out to one of the students that I may know from a previous class, and I ask them to be my chat monitor. So that student who's now face-to-face comes with his or her computer, and his or her job is to check the chat before we go to the next topic. And that's great question because that comes up all the time. I then have the face-to-face student read me the chat questions. One thing to remember if you're doing this, especially in a large classroom like Ricky and I teach from, is the Zoomers are not going to be able to hear what the face-to-face students are saying. So you have to repeat that question. which is good because now everybody's in the same boat. You have engagement with the whole class. So that's important to know. That's a great question. And if I can just digress a little bit, because that's what I do is digress. And I want to share with you, I think, what the biggest challenges in teaching in this model of teaching, and that's student engagement. And I can't imagine how Rosemary does it, what talent she has to be able to teach a foreign language on Zoom. That's amazing, much more talented than anything I could ever do. But engagement, trying to engage your face-to-face students with your students that are Zooming. And for me, it's pretty easy because I come from a law background. Law school is taught differently. It's taught in the Socratic method, which is the professor comes in and asks questions, and that's how we learn. So that's I lecture, but I use the Socratic method also, and it's really good for this format because I ask questions and I turn the class almost to a Jeopardy contest. And I ask a question. I first give the Zoom, the face-to-face students a chance to answer the question. If they don't or not completely, I then turn it to the Zoomers. And I know who the Zoomers are. They're not going to volunteer. And like Brittany says, she's not scared of a little bit of silence. Neither am I. If the silence gets too much, I just click them on. I said, Mr. Smith, I know you're there. You're on. And co-counsel Mr. Jones is going to assist you. So be ready to assist. And so we go back and forth this way. It actually turns out to be pretty competitive. The students want to win the game of Jeopardy. And I get through my lecture that way. But more importantly, I have now engaged the Zoomers. They're at home watching from their bedroom, especially if there's 8 a.m. class, with the face-to-face students that have come to the class. So I've gotten both students to interact with each other using this format. But a great question about the chat. Going back to your question, I highly recommend getting a chat monitor. Usually it's a person who's face-to-face with you, but it certainly can also be a Zoomer. It doesn't have to be somebody face-to-face, but that's how I handle the chats.
Yeah, Frank, that is such a great idea. And by the way, I stole that from you and it works famously. But I took it a step further. And I think someone else in a previous conversation had the same problem I had. And I am in a room that I have never taught in before, all the way across campus in the education building. I don't remember who it was, one of my colleagues. And I said, man, I can't hear. It's an amphitheater. It's the biggest room I've ever seen. And it echoes. And so talk about learning your environment. I'm walking around and I finally said, well, wait a second. If I can ask them to monitor my chats, I can ask someone else to translate for me because I can't hear. It's an echo. But I was honest with my students on Zoom too. I said, guys, it's echoing. And so I'm going to have someone translate to me what you said if I don't hear you. And so I just used my students who were there. And like Frank said, I've been fortunate in the last few classes. I've had as many as 17 or 18 in one the first time. Then it dropped down drastically to about 3 in one class and 5 in another. No telling what I'll have this next time. But you always can utilize those individuals in the classroom. They seem to enjoy it, and it helps me a lot, and it gets everybody involved. And so it works out really well. But that comes along with that, knowing your environment, and then just trying to get comfortable in there and have a good time, because that's what it's all about. If your students see that you're having a good time, it's going to keep them kind of a little bit looser as well. So it's a good idea.
Anybody else have any other questions? Just as the various teaching formats we've been blessed to experience before all of this happened, this is just another one of the opportunities to learn. Okay, so Angela has a question for us, for whoever would like to. How do you handle in-person breakout sessions, small group discussions, keeping in mind physical distancing? Most of you have not had that many people in an in-person classroom. Anybody want to respond?
Yeah, I have a suggestion about that that some of my colleagues in the department teaching languages will have mentioned. I don't need to do it in my classroom, one of my classrooms, because it's small enough that if I have 4 or 5 students, they can just be a group. You do have to remind them. I mean, it's kind of natural when you're in a group to want to sort of go together. You just, have to remind them to stay put where they are, and it works out just fine. But some of my colleagues have used the technique of just asking, if you needed to, asking the people in person to bring their computer if they can. And then therefore you can either attach them to a Zoomer group, or they can communicate that way if you need to take your in-class people and break them down into other groups, because otherwise it would just sound like a lot of yelling since they're so far apart from each other. So that again would be a question of, like has been mentioned often today, once you know your environment and you know your classroom, then you can sort of have the thought process of what could work there. But having them bring their computers is definitely an option. And then if they have a headset, obviously that's ideal as well.
Yeah, I just to jump on that too, and just touch on maybe one of my biggest fears that I've had teaching in this format. Again, going back to September 2020, and that is, I had a fear that I was going to be there all by myself, and just be myself, talking to a camera. And my biggest fear is that I was going to be talking to myself, and somebody was going to walk by my class and see some old man with a mask talking to a camera and said, somebody needs to be Baker acted, and then I would be Baker acted. It never happened except one time. If you recall, last fall we had a little bit of a hurricane. Classes were canceled. I was teaching the next day when class came back, and sure enough, that one student that always came, her parents said, "You're not going to class. You're staying home." I had perfect attendance, perfect through Zoom. And so I'm here by myself. I had a decision to make. Should I wear my mask or should I not? I said, well, I'm only an adjunct. I'm going to wear my mask. And what did I do? I did my entire class standing there in an empty classroom, talking to the Zoomers. It's only happened to me once. It can happen to you. Ricky and I have talked about it, and we decided we're going to do it. We're going to go through there. Luckily, nobody walked by and saw me talking to myself, and I was Baker acted. But if it happens to you, just go with it and do your class there. You're there already, and engage with your Zoomers. So it's happened to me one time. I've come close other times. I used to take it personal. I mean, I'm a brilliant speaker, I say to myself. Why wouldn't people wake up at 8 p.m. in the morning to come see me lecture? And my wife says, no, you're really not that good. And I would rather stay home and listen to you rather than get on 95 Turnpike, then fight for a parking spot, right? So if you haven't taught in this format, don't take it personal like I did at first. I think you'll find what my colleagues have found is the majority class will stay home and watch it on Zoom. And you might have that one occasion like I did, and you'll be the only one in the classroom. Go with it. Go ahead and do your lecture to the Zoomers that are viewing.
One of the things I learned from you, and I did learn this from him, is when I got in that big amphitheater and the microphone is just on a little boom, and I got my Zoomers on, and I said, okay, we're going to play a little game here. Can you hear me now? And so I would step one way, and I'd say, can you hear me now? And they would respond. Of course, they were giggling. I said, okay, I'm going to take another one. And I actually I didn't have any chalk. As a former cop, I would have chalked out a human body, but I couldn't. But I just made a reminder, okay, how far can I walk away from this microphone before they cannot hear me anymore? And I'll tell you why I did that. I am notorious when I'm teaching face-to-face. Some of my students said, you're like a game show host, Professor Langlois. You're just catting around the room, asking questions and putting people on the spot. And I have a lot of fun interacting. Well, when you're doing this classroom, you cannot move away. And Frank told me this now, but you can't really, but I had to test it. It was my theory. you can't move very far away from that microphone. They just literally cannot hear you. So you got to kind of hover and know where you're at so they can actually hear you. And so that goes back with what Rosemary was talking about knowing your environment and knowing what tools you have that are going to work and not work. And I have a big voice, I think. And at least I'm always told, boy, you're loud. But, you know, no matter how loud you are, if you step away from that microphone too much, they flat will not hear you. And that creates a little bit of a problem.
And I'm going to tell all of you who have joined us, if you have any other questions that you would like this esteemed body to respond to, please don't hesitate to post them. We are blessed to have people joining us who can share their experiences with you. And as instructors, you all know that it is all a part of the process of learning how to teach. So this is just another step in that. So we will send information out to you and respond to any of your questions. It is indeed my pleasure to thank Ricky, Frank, Rosemary, and Nancy, even though she was not able to join us today, for sharing their experiences in this new and yet not so unusual format with us. Thank you all for joining us today. We are indeed blessed to have you here with us, and to have this group of faculty who are willing to share the good, the bad, and the maybe not so wonderful experiences with us. Thank you. Ricky, Frank, Rosemary, thank you so much for sharing with us. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it. Had a great time. Thank you.
Of course, you all were wonderful.